Good evening, Chicago. I'm Jerry Vasilatos, and welcome to Chicago Corner. I want to welcome you all back to our Friday night live stream. We're going to be doing something a little different tonight. So often when I co-host the show with some of my colleagues over at Hardlands Media, and we report on local news stories, they're always punctuated by our outrage and how upset we are with the system, and it has kind of become a constant bitch fest. I came across a story on Block Club Chicago where we routinely get a lot of our news stories regarding a remarkable young woman named Melissa Hernandez. And I want to share some of her story before I bring her on. She's in the green room right now, but I would like to share what I read on Blog Club Chicago, which will demonstrate why I thought it was very important to have somebody who does the kind of work that she does hopefully inspire many of us to realize we can stop bitching and we can start doing something. Now, this comes from Blog Club Chicago and a reporter, Kirti Gopal. I'm going to bring this up on screen here so you can kind of see the article as well. Oh, I have to share the screen, and here we go. That's Melissa. And my heart is with the community, how a Belmont Cragin mom is fighting for a safer Chicago. Melissa Hernandez's Puerto Rico project provides food and supplies to people experiencing homelessness. She connects people to treatment programs and helps victims of trafficking. Melissa has a remarkable and gut-wrenching story. So I want to just preface that with understanding she's gone through a lot. Melissa Hernandez is a Belmont Cragin resident, mother, outreach director at Above and Beyond Family Recovery Center for Addiction Recovery, and founder of the Puerto Rico Project. Hernandez started the Puerto Rico Project in 2015 to provide essential services and support to Puerto Rican victims of addiction and trafficking in Chicago. While Hernandez was growing up, her mother and stepfather ran an escort service out of their home, she said. Hernandez said the two were drug dealers and drug users, and for years she was sexually abused by her stepfather. Hernandez became addicted to drugs as a teenager, and she was sex trafficked at 17. To be honest, I kind of look back sometimes and I'm like, how the hell did I survive all this shit, she said. Hernandez had her first child in 2004. She said becoming a mother was a turning point for her. When I became a mother, it was the most torturous, depressing, beautiful thing, all at the same time. It's so conflicting, Hernandez said. It's like I want to do all these amazing things and make all these changes and give my children all these things I never had, have them experience the world, and I couldn't do shit. I couldn't even afford dinner. I struggled to pay rent. Hernandez's desire to provide for her children inspired her to go to trade school, where she became certified as a dental assistant. She said that when she first experienced the school environment, she suffered from panic attacks. The transition was just like the most scariest shit ever, she said. The transition to school from being trafficked, addicted to drugs, being in jail, all that stuff. It was scary as hell. When I see people who haven't really experienced a lot or even a quarter of what I did, they just maneuver so freely, you know? I used to get so jealous, Hernandez says. Like, oh my God, I wish I was like that. How come they don't have fear? How come they don't get nervous? What is it? I didn't understand it, but I pushed through. I graduated on the dean's list. I became obsessed with my work, and that was the first time that I started something and I completed it because I was always just starting something. Fear got in the way, and I stopped. After several years working as a dental assistant, Hernandez went back to school, this time to study liberal arts, taking classes in fields like sociology and cultural anthropology. Hernandez was inspired to begin reaching out to Chicagoans experiencing homelessness during a sociology class at Wilbur Wright College. My professor was talking about how society lacks empathy. And I remember sitting right there and I was like, she's right. Effing society, man. And then she was like, I just want to remind you that you are a society. Hernandez gasped, reenacting her reaction from class. I was like, she's right. Oh my God, I'm the problem. I play a role in this too. It actually became a mission. I now introduce you all to Melissa Hernandez. Melissa, thank you for joining us tonight. Your story, as recounted and I only went through half the story. It's linked below in the show notes for people to read, and we might quote from it a little bit more. But this was really a revelation, and I'm really glad that Kirti found you to share your very unique story with readers and Chicagoans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first I want to say thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And as you're reading a part of my story, I got a little emotional. I could see how touching it could be. Having to live through it and overcoming it and now coming back to help people, it's like I'm just on the go every single day. So I never really actually stopped, especially recently, to look back and be like, how did I do that? How far I came from then to today where I'm at. Yeah, so.
Do you think it was like a fight or flight, sink or swim thing where you realized with your professor giving you that revelation, it was time to start pursuing it, or was it a gradual thing?
Actually, it was my kids. Again, it was my children. You know, I thought my children are the future. They're going to be potentially leaders of our society one day. You know, for a moment there, I thought it was a little too late for me, because here I am, an older woman going back to college, and I have 2 young boys who I had to teach empathy to. So it was all about, at first it was all about them, and it just became a mission. And that's why I started with my children, doing outreach work and feeding the homeless throughout the city of Chicago. But yeah, I never expected it to become a whole project or an organization. It just kind of happened that way because we stumbled upon a severe case in the south side of Chicago.
I'm sure also reflecting on your life growing up and the circumstances that you faced, you know, I think that a lot of people can grow up in really shitty family conditions and either replicate it or recognize how really horrible it is and decide, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to make a change, not follow those patterns. And clearly that had to have had a great impact on you, especially after you had your children.
Oh, absolutely. Excuse me. This always happens when I'm
Oh, that's okay.
Always. Absolutely. You know, growing up, I never understood how a parent wasn't so protective of their children. And of course, all these realizations came into place when I became a mother. So you know, being a mom doesn't come with a handbook, right? There's no instruction guide. So I just decided to do the opposite of what my mom did. And it was working. It was working. So I kept on with it, and it broke a lot of these family cycles that we had. Yeah. I mean, yeah, today I'm estranged from my family, unfortunately, maybe fortunately, for about 2.5 years. Yeah, between my boys.
Was there ever a moment that, I mean, that's a tough family dynamic. Has there been reconciliation with your mom or your dad coming away from that? Or, I mean, I don't want to get too personal, but I mean, it's clearly when you survive something like that, I know that a lot of survivors of abuse, especially the type that you did, they have to go through the phases of forgiveness or, you know, ultimately confronting it to put it behind them. Was that ever any kind of a component in your recovery?
Yeah, well, great question. And I am an open book, so ask away, even if you think the question is super tough. But, you know, I forgave the situation, you know, in order to move forward, in order to let it go. But it wasn't. And, you know, as I went through all these trainings, I even did a training through YWCA to become a great crisis counselor. And we were trained on how to be empathetic to people who will call in the hotline. And one thing I learned was that I don't have to forgive if I don't want to. I don't. It's a choice. Mm-hmm. Growing up in those conditions, you're not given a choice. So now here I am. One of my first choices was I didn't have to forgive. But moving forward, in order to let go of all that resentment and anger, and actually, honestly, it was rage. I had a lot of rage. There's a thin line between pain and anger. I had to forgive the situation. You know, my mom went through a lot when she was younger. She didn't get the help that she needed. She didn't have the support that she needed. I mean, I don't hate her. So my stepfather, that's another story. I mean, he denied it. He, you know, of course, I'm the liar, the middle child seeking attention. I mean, he had to say, I mean, he goes around admitting that they're a child pedophile. He since has died 2.5 years ago from stage 4 cancer. My father was actually out the picture. My actual father was out the picture since I was about 6. I found him in my early 20s, and we became fairly close. He was the parent I wish I always had, and unfortunately, he passed away in March. Yeah.
But you reconnected with him.
Yep, I did.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure obviously the levels of recovery you went through have got to be so very valuable in how you were performing as a crisis counselor through the training you just mentioned.
Yeah. Rape crisis counselor, but also in the field as well. I mean, projection is a real thing. It's very important that when we hear similar cases that we are not providing any type of maybe bias support coming from a place of our own issues. So that was something that I had to learn right away as well. And, you know, with therapy combined, kind of be okay with everything that I went through.
What, you know, we were covering on the national show at Hard Lens Media tonight what was happening in New York with Andrew Cuomo and all of the abuse and harassment he put so many of his female staffers through. Now, your situation is a completely different one. And where I'm going with this is that because those women in New York ultimately had to have the courage to step forward and speak out. So when we talk about victims who are in horrific circumstances like your own within a family dynamic, what words of strength or encouragement can you hopefully provide when you're dealing with victims of these circumstances to stand up for themselves and have the courage to speak out? Because it can't be easy. I mean, you really need to recognize you're putting it all on the line, because as you said, you know, your stepfather painted you as the person who was dishonest in light of horrible abuses he committed. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, in your role as an intervention counselor, how are you able to help guide people towards maybe letting go of, I don't know if there's a guilt or shame associated with it, because there shouldn't be. Victims are not the ones responsible. Can you maybe speak a little bit to that?
Well, first and foremost, what I tell people who come to me with similar situations or situations in that realm is that it wasn't their fault. It was not their fault, period, point blank. Sometimes shame and stuff has to be worked through ongoing therapy, but first and foremost, it wasn't their fault. They also, if they don't want to, they don't have to speak up. All this is all choice, whatever they feel. And also, too, what I recommend is a legal advocate or support, a support person, if they do tend to come forward, to just reach out to a legal advocate to kind of they specialize in this, they know the laws ins and out, and make sure that they are treated fair, and they kind of tell them what the next steps are going to be.
That's very, very helpful. As we move forward through what some of the article on you recounted, now your children inspired you to go into trade school. They were obviously the turning point. Then you began work with now let me ask you, is the Puerto Rican project, did that precede or follow your work with the Above and Beyond Center on the West Side that helps people in the homeless community?
Yeah, so the Puerto Rico project was the first thing ever. That started in about 2015 when I was just, feeding homeless people throughout the city of Chicago. I've been at Above and Beyond a little over a year. I was hired there during the lockdown last year. And I became director of outreach there. And then a bunch of our patients were going without food. And weren't able to get jobs because of things like IDs. And, we had issues with the DMV and the Secretary of State being closed, and people just didn't have a choice. So we decided to open up a food pantry to kind of help out the situation. And we went into a community that was lacking resources.
Now, this is the Above and Beyond project or the Puerto Rico project?
Above and Beyond.
Okay. Yeah. So let's take a step back. Since you had founded the Puerto Rico project before your work with Above and Beyond, that's an extraordinary undertaking. I mean, I would imagine in logistics, finding volunteers, finding the resources to provide the food, the supplies that you would go out and provide people. And, it's no joke, this article on Blog Club Chicago, you are fighting for a safer Chicago with all of these amazing initiatives that you're involved in. But can you tell us what led to the Puerto Rico project, and how did you, I guess, amass the resources to cover what you needed to take care of to actually provide the support for homeless people throughout Chicago? Tell us the Puerto Rico project story.
Okay, do you want me to start from the beginning? All right.
Yeah, please. Yeah, we've got all the time. I love long conversations, so we're in no rush. I really want people to know about, what you've done in detail, and I'm hoping that this will be an inspiration for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. I see I'm getting a little dark there.
Do you have a light in your kitchen there you can turn on? We can let you turn it on real quick. I'm not sure if you're in the kitchen or living room.
Yeah, just give me one.
Sure, take your time.
Okay, cool. Let's see.
This always happens as we go through the evening. We start when it's daylight, then, that's perfect. Nice. You're very well lit. Thank you. Makes a difference. Okay.
All right. So, like I said, it started summer of 2015. I was actually volunteering with another organization that already was feeding homeless people throughout the city of Chicago too. We were getting a lot of messages. I was getting messages through Facebook saying, hey, we're seeing a lot of Puerto Rican people over here in the south side of Chicago, which was by Cermak, off of Western. And another lady stated that her church went out to feed a few of these guys. And when she went to this encampment, there was like 30 plus people. And it was something that was unheard of, never seen it before. And it was all Puerto Ricans. But right before that, there was this article kind of going viral on Facebook written by Adriana Cardona, kind of describing the whole situation. And it was one of those stories where it just sounds too horrible to be true.
I'm sure you sensed it could be true given horrible circumstances. People aren't, thankfully not as many people are exposed to horrible circumstances, but when you've lived through it, and it hits you.
Yeah. But when you hear that government is behind it and, Chicago is big and bad, I was like, yeah, nothing like that could be happening here. So when I first read the article, I thought it was fake. And so I actually met some of these individuals that were trafficked from Puerto Rico. So one guy started sharing his story, and as he was sharing his story, he started whispering. And he said that one of the unlicensed treatment programs were kind of standing in front of it, and they were actually shutting down to move to another location. So this is something that apparently over time I was told that they do is shut down and move, so nobody will kind of be behind them and beyond to what they're actually doing. So when he was giving us his story, it was just again, like the article stated, like I just had this weird energy run from the top of my head all the way down to my feet. And I was like, I have to do something. I have to do something about this. But we're out there, we're at about 60 meals, and more and more and more people just started coming for food, and they started eating, they were swallowing it. And I was like, where are all these individuals coming from? So growing up, Chicago was always a little segregated to me. You know, Puerto Ricans over here in Humboldt Park. Mexicans over here in the South Side. You know, we had white individuals over here in the suburbs or the North Side and whatnot. And so to a bunch of Puerto Ricans homeless in a predominant Mexican community, it was something was off. So I came back. I told them I'll come back. I did. Came back with meals. I started feeding them. I started walking around with a pen and paper. I started, how did you get here? Who referred you over here? What's the name of the program that you went to? What's your story? And I was recording it. So I had, Spanish is not my language. I didn't really know Spanish. So I was also walking around with a translator. Now, mind you, I learned Spanish through all of them because I was so determined to help them. So now I could communicate. I could hold a conversation in Spanish.
Let me interrupt you just for a moment really quickly. Yeah. We had a question in the live chat, and you mentioned you had learned about some of this through Facebook. And did the resources for the Puerto Rico project come from your interaction with people in the community on Facebook? Because obviously there had to be a tremendous amount of resources when you're talking about bringing food and stuff, and obviously that's expensive. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came together?
Absolutely. So I started a Facebook page called the Puerto Rico Project. What I did was start sharing some of the stories that individuals were sharing with me. I started sharing their journeys, and I started sharing what I'm seeing out there. And I was like, I need help. And so people just started coming forward left and right. I'll sponsor a meal. You had somebody else who said, I had 2 bags of clothes. You had somebody else who said, hey, I'll give you money for gas. And that's kind of how it started. And it was consistent. I ran the Puerto Rico project 5+ years, only based on community donations.
That's incredible, Melissa. That's the power of social media.
Yeah.
When we see people on Facebook or Twitter, and again, getting back to what was a bit of the push for this show, we use social media so much to bitch and complain. And here you are sharing the stories from these people that you meet. And I would tell anybody in our audience who hasn't experienced, you can very easily experience it. Just go drive through the city. Drive under an underpass. Drive under a bridge. We have more tent cities right now in the city of Chicago than I ever imagined was possible. It's literally every underpass since mental health clinics were closed by the city. Funding was cut. Not enough resources are going to helping people who are facing these circumstances. And here you are, stepping out from your circumstances, creating this Facebook page on social media, doing outreach, and showing people how you can make a difference.
Yeah, and that's all I used. But when it comes down to the referral part of it and the treatment aspect, I went back. I called one of my community leader friends in Humboldt Park, and she connected me with Senator William Delgado. And I talked to him, and I was like, "Hey, this is what I found. This is what's happening." And he was really surprised. He said that he heard about this situation for about a year, and he wanted to do something, but he didn't know where they were at. He just read the article on it, he heard stories, and then here I am. I have access to everyone. And so we just started working as a team, and Delgado led me to Rincon Family Services, and then from there, Haymarket, and then it just, a whole bunch of programs just started wanting to help, and it became a project of advocacy and case management and lifting up their voices as well.
It might be social media, which is what people are going to have to turn to when the eviction moratorium is lifted. And more people will sadly be forced out of their homes given our government's lack of response to extending it and providing the resources to people who have lost their jobs or who are, facing rental crisis. So you say the Puerto Rico project lasted 5 years. Now, what ended up? I certainly there's still a need for it. Did it just wrap because of lack of support and funding, or did it kind of fold into your work with Above and Beyond on the West Side?
No. So what ended up happening was a couple of years ago. So the Puerto Rico project, we were on the news here and there, and Philadelphia got word, and a Philadelphia reporter reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I think the same thing's happening here." And I gave him the blueprints. I was like, "Hey, this is exactly what's happening here." And he went and investigated. Same thing was happening over there. And so that came out in the news over there. They had a hearing, shut down the programs over there. But political news investigators from Puerto Rico picked up on the issue in Philadelphia and did some research, and see it originated from Chicago. So they reached out to me, and I took them to these programs. They interviewed some individuals, and they kind of aired it 3 days straight in Puerto Rico, including interviewing some of these government officials that were sending people off. So what ended up happening was they implemented a policy that they could no longer send people off the island without verifying that they're going to a licensed facility. So they just stopped using Chicago.
So help paint that for me also. When you said they would not let people leave and come to Chicago without knowing they were coming to the proper facility. From the stories you heard, well, obviously there were a lot of people that were trafficked. That's how they were brought in. What about some of the other people that ended up facing these circumstances where they ended up homeless or weren't able to find any, I don't know, work, support, programs here?
Are we talking about individuals that came from Puerto Rico?
Yes.
Yeah, because the majority of them were coerced to leave the island. And so
when you say coerced by people and by the powers in Puerto Rico to leave?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm. They even there's this panhandling law. One individual told me he was panhandling, and I guess it's illegal in a certain town in Puerto Rico. So they said, "Hey, we're gonna either arrest you or you leave right now."
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So he chose to leave, and so in Puerto Rico, it's these social service programs are run by these police, and the government has access to that, right? They oversee that. So from the stories that we collected, they stated that they used the police to transport them to the airport and make sure that they got on the plane and left. And then somebody from here, from one of these unlicensed programs, would just meet them and pick them up.
So when Philadelphia covered this and you had this representative cover it, eventually it ended. The Puerto Rico project ended because of what was the reason?
Yeah. So sorry.
That's okay. We were there was obviously a lot of backstory there. I was curious. So, I'm sorry. Continue, please.
No, it's fine. So I was still doing the Puerto Rico project, right? We still had folks here. I mean, there's people that go into treatment, come back out, end up homeless again, and kind of are stuck in the cycle. And I would still go out there doing supplies and food. So it wasn't until I want to say I kind of stopped maybe a good 7 months ago. I put it on hold because now I wanted to transition the Puerto Rico project. So the focus was victims of human trafficking from Puerto Rico. That's no longer the case. So now that's why I wanted to implement a mobile shower unit to street outreach and continue street outreach. Now, it's not only about food, but it's also about reducing harm when it comes down to drug use. I'm also a syringe access program. So I wanted to just merge all of it and just it being like a whole Chicago outreach team effort.
Now that's a component also to this story. I'm gonna return to Block Club Chicago, and that is drug use. And you were quoted. Hernandez said race is an essential part of the conversation around drug use and one that is often overlooked. According to the New York Times, prior to the 1980s, whites and non-whites were equally represented among first-time heroin users. Despite this, discriminatory drug laws violently and punitively targeted communities of color. We know this. We've talked about this on the show a lot of times. with Black and Latino people arrested and incarcerated at drastically higher rates than their white counterparts. The 2000s brought about a shift. In the decade leading up to 2015, nearly 90% of first-time heroin users were white. As growing numbers of white Americans began dying from opioid overdose, the nation and its lawmakers started paying attention. In 2017, the Federal Department of Health and Human Services declared the opioid epidemic a national public health emergency. And I love your quote here because it's so true. When people say, oh yeah, the opioid crisis, this shit just effing hits a nerve for the simple fact it's always been a crisis in our communities, Hernandez said. It became a crisis when the suburban whites started dying from it. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? We had grieving moms in our communities of color since the beginning of time. Our fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters been dying since the beginning of time. Nobody gave an F. I was like, nobody cares about our grief. So your next goal, as you were just mentioning, is to acquire the mobile shower unit, and talk a little bit about how the Puerto Rico project it was going to transition into helping people with the drug problem. But I also believe that the Above and Beyond Center on the West Side is also helping people with drug addiction crises, intervention, and recovery.
Yeah, well, during my time with the Puerto Rico project, I was in college, and I was offered a position doing harm reduction work through the Chicago Recovery Alliance. I was there for about 2.5, 3 years, and I resigned last year, and so Above and Beyond reached out to me. So I'm also an addictions counselor. And I specialize in street outreach with all the years doing the Puerto Rico project. So they hired me on as the director of outreach. So Above and Beyond, we're a level 1, level 2. We do intensive outpatient, we do outpatient, we work with the courts. We have so many services under one roof. We're a very innovative program. We have different models. We have smart recovery, REBT. If one model, usually what happens in the treatment world is if it's not working for someone in that facility, they kind of get referred out to another program. But just leaving out that door, they might be a little bit hopeless. They're in a vulnerable state of their life, trying to make this transition into recovery. So our motto at Above and Beyond, we're trying to have different models so we don't have to refer people out of our door. If one model is not working, we could refer them across the hall. We also have a housing department. We have an employment department. We provide GED services. We have a doctor on site who provides, they do blood pressure check. They check glucose levels. And we're partnered with over 100 plus community partners like hospitals, other treatment programs, other different levels of care. Also, too, one thing that makes us unique as well is that we have an alumni program. So once you complete our program, we have this huge graduation, and we just don't say bye, see you later, good luck on your recovery. Sometimes recovery is a lifelong battle. So they're able to stay and continue. And we have an alumni group specifically for them because they completed the program, but they're also able to access any group therapy. And they're able to come back, they're able to volunteer. There's job opportunities for them as well. And they're able to access any service forever.
That's incredible. I want you to, you mentioned earlier that obviously your children were a great inspiration to you.
Yeah.
In your work and how you pursued helping people. What are you and your family's dreams now, your sons? I know that some of this was mentioned in the article, but I'd love to hear it from you. Obviously your kids are very lucky to have a mother that broke this cycle of abuse, recognizing, what it takes to raise a family and the importance and commitment to children. Tell us, would you like to share a little bit about your children and what their dreams are and what your hopes are for their future?
Yeah, absolutely. My oldest, he just finished an internship, paid internship at DePaul University. gaming and designing. He wants to go into something regarding finance right now. He's obsessed with the stock market. He does some
as everybody is right now, stuck at home. If you're stuck at home with no job and you have a few, I mean, we talked about the whole meme stock thing. So your son's very, very smart to get involved early.
Yeah. Well, I'm at work and I get a text message, Mom, you got to jump on GameStop. What? I don't know anything about the stock market right now. Like, yeah. So yeah, he's looking into colleges right now. He's last year of high school, and he wants to major in business. That's my oldest. He's 17. My youngest, who's 12, he's a little undecided right now. He's just all about games. He wants to build computers.
That's what my nephew wants to do. It's incredible. Kids of this age, I really do think it's the fascination and obviously the culture of gaming that there's a good side to it. It gets younger people interested in technology, building their own computers to game, but then they're obviously going to have a lot more information there that's as valuable beyond gaming if they go into tech or IT or those fields. Right.
So I'm like, what do you want for your birthday? And he sends me this Amazon list of all these computer parts that one part was like $500. I'm like, what's going on with our kids? I'm like, no, we're going to have to spread this out a little bit.
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Melissa, what do you see now? I mean, obviously you've done so much, but there's still so much more to do. And obviously these are the first steps of your journey. What do you see for your future here as you continue working with the outreach program that you're in, and what else you want to do in the future?
Yeah, outreach is in my DNA. Harm reduction's in my DNA. Just meeting people where they're at in life, whether it's, drug use or whatever, that's just, it's become a part of my worldview and, pass that down to my children. But overall, I want to continue doing outreach. I want to expand the Puerto Rico project. My dream is to have a residential program as well for women. The city of Chicago lacks a lot of services for women. There's so many barriers. It's ridiculous. I'm a woman of color who's been impacted by incarceration, and I say the same thing all the time. Walmart would not even hire me because of it, and it was just so hard to feed my children at one point in time in my life because I was a felon. Since then, Cabrini Green Legal Aid, they helped seal my record. I was able to get housing and get a job and all these things. And it's just everything that I learned the hard way, I am teaching others on how to do it so they won't be discouraged on moving forward, And our mothers are our community. They raise our children, and we need some healing. We do.
I was listening to everything you just said, but I wanted to add this banner to guide people to donating to your GoFundMe for the mobile shower unit. And I want you to share a little bit more about that initiative. It's tremendous. You've already raised $10,000 of your $40,000 goal. Can you tell us a little bit about what this involves? Obviously, the money is going to a good cause, but where will the mobile shower units be located? Are these integrated with Above and Beyond? Tell us a little bit about this fundraiser.
So Above and Beyond is pretty much, they support everything I do. My executive director, he's amazing. I mean, I come with an idea, he's like, jump on it. So it's a little different. Like I said, it's with outreach. So the Puerto Rico project is outreach too, but it's its own entity. And I have a paid full-time position doing outreach and director of the food pantry. But Above and Beyond supports everything that I do outside of work. So during the years of outreach, there was a lot of folks who were at the verge of dehydration, and I would come out with a lot of water and stuff, but they were always sweaty and they were like in the brink of tears, like, Melissa, where can we take a shower? And I would come home and I get on my social media, like, these things are small to us because we could come home and jump in the shower.
I can't start my day unless I take a shower to wake myself up. Right? When you see these people living under bridges and tents, it's just, we can't imagine, Melissa. It's horrifying. And in the richest country in the world, this is what enrages me every week that we talk about this stuff.
Yeah. And just a little background behind that. I was like, I'm going to try my best, no promises, to try to find you a shower. So I went to the churches in the community. I'm like, hey, you know, can they shower here, please? I would be here. I would watch it. I would facilitate it. And it was always a no, 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 no. There's such a stigma too around people who use drugs. It's like we're the low of the lowest, and I'm gonna include me in there because I used to inject heroin. I used to smoke crack at one point in time in my life, and you know, just remembering how I was mistreated, like I was a piece of trash. You know, so that's why it's so important. You know what? I stood in my addiction longer. I thought I did. I believed it. I thought it was a piece of trash. I was like, I deserve to die.
Interesting. Let me just interject too. It's interesting how those who, you know, flout morality around like a weapon lack the empathy that's supposed to go towards people like you who are dealing with that. You'd think, well, why do we want to judge them instead of help them? And that's where the empathy comes from. I think your professor was talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you meet people with empathy and action. I mean, I could sit here and say you could do this and give all the advice, but if there's no connection, I mean, you're going to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt.
So you're trying to find showers for people, resources for, and people were judging you because of your record, your struggles with addiction, and how did, and it was it the pushback you were getting that eventually made you guided you towards how you could make it happen with the GoFundMe, or how did it lead to that?
Well, to be honest, I feel like everything that I went through in my life was kind of a preparation for what, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't say, hey, you know, once I'm done with all this, I'm going to come back and go hit the streets and help people who unhoused or who are currently using drugs. It was never my intention. So I feel like I was guided to do this because it started from like a class in college and I had this epiphany. But I remember, like I said, during my days of drug use, the mistreatment I got and the mistreatment that the individuals that I was helping, that they received, such the stigma around drug use. They don't even want, there's businesses, public, who have public restrooms who won't even allow them to use the washroom.
Oh, you can walk off the street and go into a restaurant and look and be very, very well dressed, and they won't let you use the restroom. It's like the indignity of a commercial establishment, unless you spend money there. And even if you spend money there, they still shut their restrooms down. Literally, I mean, I sometimes think, you know what? If I didn't have my mind right, I would probably like just squat and make a statement right there and do it right in front of the counter, because literally that's, I mean, what else do you have to do when you're suffering the indignity of somebody not allowing you access to their facility so you can relieve yourself? It's inhumane. It's just like but this is what society ingrains in us.
It's a human right.
They judge you. Yeah, they just judge you, and it's like, well, I can withhold you going in our bathroom because I don't like the way you look, or the way you're dressed, or you didn't spend money at our counter here, when everybody needs a place to go. And especially, or shower, or just wash your hands, even if it's that.
Thank you. So with this food pantry that we opened up in the west side of Chicago, West Garfield Park, I make it a point. I tell everyone, staff, volunteers, we are not going to this restroom. We are not going to do it. Now, if somebody's in there longer than 10 minutes, it's okay to do a little. I mean, we don't know what they're doing in there. We have Narcan on standby throughout the whole facility. Everyone is trained to reverse an overdose. And we're well aware we're in the middle of a community where the crime rate is high, the drug use is high, and it's okay. But one thing we're not going to do is police that bathroom. That's one of the things.
Well, there are protocols in place within the clinic. You're there to help people. Many years ago, I helped a friend's daughter who was dealing with addiction issues, and I took her to the clinic in Uptown. I was basically giving her a ride back and forth. And they had very strict rules. These clinics that are there have very strict protocols to be able to wean and help. I mean, obviously you're not going to go in a bathroom with somebody, but there were other safeties in place to make sure that no one was coming in and basically working against what they were there for. So, that's part of this whole process of providing these programs and outreach in these clinics.
Yeah. And one thing I want to make it a point to say, because we get a lot of people who are on the opposite end of the spectrum who are like, I don't want to pay for this. I don't want to pay for their home. I don't want to pay for their insurance. I don't want to pay for their treatment. But it costs so much more money when somebody is unhoused, who's not able to eat. I mean, there's these survival crimes where they're going to go rob the local grocery store and get something to eat. And then who's paying for? We're paying for this. Let's talk about when somebody fatally overdoses. Who's paying for those services?
We're a reactive society, not a preventative one. And this has always been at the heart of, I think, what the problem is with America right now. Not to get on that high horse, but we're always seeing, it costs more to fix things later than perhaps provide solutions in advance, like, Medicare for all, free college so people can educate themselves and get good jobs. These are the things that you think a society would want to offer their people so that we better ourselves to be a stronger nation. But it's been brainwashed in us, ingrained in us, this survival of the fittest, the American dream, pull yourself up by your boots. You got to have boots to pull up your bootstraps. And unless you've got generational wealth for so many people in all of these neighborhoods across the city, it's not realistic. And I'm not saying, you have to give everybody handouts, but you can certainly focus on giving people hands up. That's what it's about. And that's what empathy is about in dealing with these issues and not dismissing them and saying, well, these people, they're not going to change. They just want everything for free. Yeah, there are people who abuse the system, but you can't paint a broad stroke against those who've suffered or gone through circumstances like you, which you've miraculously lifted yourself out of to actually give back, Melissa. I'm humbled to hear what you have to share here. I did some volunteer work many years ago with the night ministry, so I got a chance firsthand to see what a group that helps provide services to the community does. Great organization. I'm sure just as well as yours. If people have an opportunity to volunteer at any of these really fine outreach organizations and they've got the time to, I would encourage it, because it really does open your eyes to what the city is really like and what it's really all about if you have had the luxury of privilege in your life. So, Melissa, where can people find you on social media?
Well, I do have a Facebook page, and maybe I need to hire my 17-year-old to kind of manage.
Hire him. He should be doing it for free. He should be doing a service for the mom who's giving him so much. I'm sure he would. You just got to lean on him to get off the games and help you with Twitter or other social media pages.
Well, my young one, he's informed on TikTok. I'm still learning on what this TikTok is, but I mean, something that everyone's getting their hand into now. So I got to pick that up.
Well, you're definitely on Facebook, because that's how I found you after I read the Block Club Chicago article. I said, I got to find this woman. I didn't see you on Twitter, but I did a search on Facebook and reached out. Is the Puerto Rico Project page still there or above? Okay, so that's still there. I'm sure, so people can go to Facebook and search for the Puerto Rico Project, search your name, Melissa Hernandez. Also search and seek out where you are right now. What am I just spacing out? Above.
There's Above and Beyond Family.
Above and Beyond.
Yeah.
They've got a page also.
The Puerto Rico Project on Facebook, it's called the Chicago Puerto Rico Project. Okay. And I had to throw in Chicago in there because during the Hurricane Maria, people saw that I was feeding folks and they thought I was in Puerto Rico, and I didn't want to mislead anyone.
Sure.
So but we are the harm reduction team. That's what we are. The focus is no longer on the that specific demographic of human trafficking victims, because like I said, we're able to stop that a couple of years ago. So we're DBA, the Harm Reduction Team Puerto Rico Project. That's where I was born from. And we are raising funds for a mobile shower unit
And there's the GoFundMe down there, everybody. Look down there. We also linked it in the live chat so people can hopefully click through and get to that page. And I really hope so many of our viewers who are watching right now live, as well as those who watch the rebroadcast, will please click through. We're going to have that link in the show notes. It's important for all the work that you've done. People, $5, $10, every little bit counts. Help some of these people who are not as lucky as the rest of us have access to like a place where they can clean up, wash their hands, take a shower. It's the simplest dignity that we can help provide. And I'm really happy and impressed that you're at 10,000, but you need 40 to cover this. So I really do want to encourage everybody watching now, and hopefully in the rebroadcast when it's on YouTube after we're done, we'll click through and contribute. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Stuff that you're doing, stuff on the horizon coming up soon?
Yeah, well, I want to put some emphasis on the naloxone. All right, so folks, people who are out there, using drugs, which is almost a lot of people, right? Naloxone, it could reverse an overdose. You could get it from your doctor. You could get it from a pharmacist, Walgreens. You could reach out, research your local harm reduction organization. You could get it for free. There's training videos. If somebody is on drugs, to get a kit is so easy. You can even reach out to me. Hey, my number, 773-441-0958. Send me a text. I will deliver. I would tell you where to go. I would train you. But overdose deaths are preventable. Sorry about that. They are preventable. We could all have a hand in saving lives.
I want to quote, as we come to the close of the show here, from Block Club Chicago with this photo that I just brought up. Hernandez drives away from an encampment after handing out supplies. I used to get a lot of messages of people like, "Oh my God, how do I do that?" she said. And I'm like, dude, it's so easy. Hernandez said people get intimidated by the idea of conducting outreach on their own. They're like, "Holy shit, I can't do it," she said. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You can do whatever you put your heart and mind
to. Thank you for that. And that is so true. You could do whatever you put your heart and mind to, because I was just one person. And, like you said, I utilized social media, and communities just got together and just started unloading on me. There was times where I went out by myself. People were like, "Aren't you scared?" Not. The people that everyone's afraid of, that's who I help. There's just, you could do so much with so little. I learned how to create 30 meals with $20. I mean, simple.
The key is learning how to live life fearlessly. Nothing is easy, but that which is the greatest reward comes with great risk. So people do need to live fearlessly. Just do it, and look, everything that you've, I feel so blessed to have discovered you or found you, to have you on the show. You are the Wonder Woman of Belmont, Cragin, fighting for a safer Chicago. And I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I'm going to follow your work in the future. And if you ever want to come back on the show, we'd love to have you on again to talk about any new developments. People know how to find you now with your social media. Your phone number's up there. Melissa, it's been a pleasure. And
thank you for having me.
My pleasure. To all of our viewers, if it's happening on the streets, you'll hear about it here on Chicago Corner, as you did tonight. So please, everybody, have a safe weekend. Make a difference where you can. Melissa, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. And everybody, stay safe, Chicago.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.